Hey folks, today's episode is brought to you by my favorite LMS, Brightspace. When it comes to designing your learning experiences, Brightspace is my number one recommendation. As both an instructional designer and an instructor, I am confident in saying that Brightspace is by far the most user-friendly learning platform that I can think of. Whether you're in K through 12, higher ed, corporate America, or government, this is the LMS for you. They've been making moves by integrating H5P into the platform and recently came out with Lumi, a new AI-powered tool to help you with your designs. You can try Brightspace for free for 30 days by going down below and selecting the link inside of the show notes. And of course, if you have any questions about Brightspace, please feel free to give me a shout because I use this on a daily basis. And now, let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast that you're going to hear today. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm an instructional designer, author, blogger, podcaster, and instructor. And my purpose is to be able to share with you more about instructional design and what I'm seeing in the field with the latest and the greatest. And you can find all of the information that I have for you over at drlukehobson.com. Today's episode is all about immersive learning. So, question for you. What is the future of learning? It's a difficult question to answer as the goalposts keep on moving further and further. One year it's micro-learning, the next it's the metaverse, and now it's all about generative AI. Technology can be an instructional designer's best friend, but tech is useless unless we use it effectively. Technology has also created an invisible foe, distractions. Right now, while you are either reading this article or listening to this podcast episode, everything is fighting for your attention. And this can be your inbox, your Apple Watch, Slack, LinkedIn, calls, text, or something else. We live in a world that's full of distractions, and whatever gets your attention wins. In theory, could learning win? Could learning get the most amount of attention? Well, that's quite an interesting concept. And yes, we can do this with, as you probably guessed it, immersive learning. So what is immersive learning? The definition has evolved over time, but to put it simply, it's a learning theory where learning through experience with real-world situations are emphasized. One could argue that John Dewey's advocacy for hands-on learning or Piaget's theory on cognitive development could be the origin of immersive learning. Technology truly kickstarted this notion, though, with simulation-based learning for pilots during World War II. Flight simulators, developed to train pilots safely and cost-effectively, laid the groundwork for using technology to create this form of realistic training environment. And since this time, immersive learning has only grown. And while everyone is talking about the next wave of AI trainings, I want to share some real-world stories about how companies, schools, and organizations are using immersive learning today to give you some ideas to bring them back into your designs. The first area that we should be exploring is healthcare. During the pandemic, there was a boom of enrollments in medical schools. And while this is amazing, it did cause one sort of problem. If classrooms are in lockdown, how do you train med students? I mean, there are simply some things that you cannot teach online, like surgeries or medical procedures. You definitely want someone to be able to have a more hands-on learning kind of approach. Now, one university in California, the Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine, found that the answer was within VR. The course about operating on cadavers offered a new way to take practice before practicing on a real cadaver. And what this did is that this led to an increase in training hours and was deemed so effective that the university still offers this type of learning method despite no longer being in lockdown. And they are not alone in this. In many other different areas within healthcare, people are using virtual reality more and more to be able to generate these types of practice hours. And you can look at many other different types of leaders in the field, like with Stanford and Johns Hopkins, who are rolling out more ways of training med students with simulations and with VR. then the popularity of VR in the medical space, it continues to climb today for surgery preparation, even how to talk to patients, which is another interesting avenue that we're going to be diving on into a little bit more in this episode, and many other different types of ways. And it's not so surprising to be seeing that more and more examples from healthcare and using immersive learning tactics are being quite effective. The next area to talk about is within sports. If the Commanders win this week, every NFL team should be using VR. Wait, what did I just hear? And I said this to myself as I caught the tail end of my favorite fantasy football podcasts, and the hosts were discussing about Jaden Daniels' preparation for his next upcoming game. Daniels, if you don't know, is the quarterback for the Washington Commanders, and unfortunately, he injured his ribs during a game a couple of weeks ago. This injury led to a diagnosis of him being a game-time decision for his next upcoming match against the Carolina Panthers. Unsure if he was going to play or not, he still prepared like he was using a type of a VR headset. This wasn't just any type of headset, though. He actually used a custom VR system that was developed by a German company called Cognilize. Hopefully, I am saying that right. Cognilize, Cognilize, I believe. And this system that was developed by them incorporates the team's playbook and simulates specific stadiums and opposing teams, and it provides a realistic, immersive training environment for him as the quarterback. And by being able to engage with these types of simulations, Daniels can practice reading defenses, making decisions, and executing plays without taking the physical damage of actually being on a field and being hit during practice. Now, what's fascinating about this is that this kind of training allows Daniels to experience game scenarios at an accelerated pace. He actually sets the simulation speed higher than normal, which helps him to be able to process information more quickly compared to during a real game. And he attributes this type of development as a rookie quarterback, and I can see why. What's really interesting about all of this is that the Commanders staff have completely bought into the idea. With us being in instructional design, whenever we try to be able to use some form of technology, there's always a pitch, there's always a buy-in. You have to be able to get everyone on the same page. And he himself was able to get the folks to buy into this concept. And their offensive coordinator, just to really show how much they believe in it, their offensive coordinator records the weekly plays and he narrates them into the simulation to make it more realistic, because that is the voice that he hears in his helmet as he is calling a play during the real game. Now you might be asking to yourself, so did the Commanders win their next game? Was all this training with mental repetitions worth it? Oh yeah, the Commanders won 40-7 against the Panthers. So maybe they're on to something. The NFL has a problem with training young quarterbacks and not giving them enough time to develop. And with college being so different compared to the professional level, immersive learning could provide that edge that many teams are searching for and trying to be able to help them with training their players, and essentially in our world, trying to be able to upskill and to train their employees. The next area to talk about are human skills. Yes, human skills. Soft skills, whatever you want to be able to call them. I hate soft skills, personally. That's why I call them human skills. And the concept of teaching people to be human, well, that's an interesting task that you may have as an instructional designer, depending upon what types of learning experiences you're creating. Now, you would think this would be easy, but no. And many HR trainings are the butt of jokes from employees because of how poorly designed they are. We've all been there before, where we have taken a type of a course from HR and just said, what is this? It's just awful. It completely misses the mark. And it's sometimes borderline comical seeing how they develop some of these different forms of things. So, how do we make employees care about these kinds of trainings? Can we actually change behavior this way with these different types of trainings? When my wife started working at Etsy, she had to go through a harassment training that was based in augmented reality, or more commonly known as AR. This concept is more of a simulation or video game where you control the actions on a computer screen. So you're not wearing a headset anymore, it's just actually looking at a laptop screen. So on the screen, she was seated in a conference room with multiple characters, and two of the characters were openly mocking another person that wasn't present in the room. And then the characters turned around and looked at her and started to egg her on to kind of carry on the negative talk and the banter. They wanted her to join in the conversation and to make fun of this other person. Now, at that moment, she had to make a decision on what is she going to do next. And it felt very uncomfortable because it mimicked a real world situation. You are now having these characters look at you, and even though they're not real and it looks like a well-developed video game, it still was like, ooh, like what would I do in this type of a situation? Now, I encountered a very similar training before at MIT that was actually a email-based simulation. Which I know sounds very odd, but this is how it actually worked, is that I would receive an email from a fictitious character unfairly criticizing another employee, and I had to then respond back. Now, every time I responded back, it led to a new series of conversations and could either be escalated or perhaps I could try to be able to diffuse the situation. I was really, really surprised that whenever I sent something back, I would get this level of detail that really sounded like a real person was emailing me back. And I kept on not going down the road that this character wanted me to once again join in the making fun of someone. And they would actually get angry with me. And it was like, ooh, I'm reading angry emails because of my actions. And in the real world, this, certainly could happen. Now, it's not just MIT, though. There are more and more companies who are adopting immersive learning for training purposes. UPS has a simulated experience for drivers to learn about what to do when a dog attacks you. Something I never thought about, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How do you handle that situation? And of course, let's not have a dog attack you in the real world for training purposes. Let's do it inside of a more simulated experience. And Walmart is also following along with these same lines by using virtual reality to teach employees about how to interact with upset customers and trying to be able to lead with empathy. Now, I know what you are thinking. Is this actually effective? One can go through this kind of immersive learning experience, but does it really change behavior? What does the research say? I do have some examples that I want to be able to dive on into pertaining to rehabilitation, but this does tie into domestic violence. So just a heads up and a warning, if this is uncomfortable for you to hear, please skip ahead several minutes and then we can wrap up the episode from there. So rehabilitation is an interesting concept to think about with immersive learning and thinking about measuring effectiveness. A group of researchers in Spain explored the concept and the use of virtual reality to rehabilitate domestic abusers by immersing them in scenarios that foster empathy and improve emotional recognition. It was a notable study that was titled Offenders Become the Victim in Virtual Reality: Impact of Changing Perspectives in Domestic Violence. And this involved male domestic violent offenders embodying a virtual female victim experiencing abuse. They would look inside of a mirror, and instead of essentially seeing what their actual body is and I'm assuming their perception of being this large, tough male figure, instead they had a virtual female avatar, and that was mimicking the reactions and everything that they were doing in real time. Now, the findings from this study revealed that after this VR experience, offenders showed enhanced ability to recognize fearful female faces, suggesting a potential reduction in aggressive behavior. You can actually see these interactions on YouTube, by the way. I'm going to put a link into the article if you want to read it more, and you can search it for yourself to find it on YouTube, but you can pinpoint the exact moments that you can tell that the light bulb moment went off inside of the abusers' heads to be able to finally realize the errors of their ways and making them really get a sense about just how awful the things that they were doing to these women. Another study that was titled Domestic Violence from a Child Perspective: Impact of an Immersive Virtual Reality Experience on Men with a History of Intimate Partner Violent Behavior had participants embody a child's perspective during a domestic violence scenario. This approach led to improved recognition of angry facial expressions and heightened physiological responses to violent events, indicating increased empathy and awareness of the impact of their actions. So immersive learning isn't just about with training employees or trying to be able to help students learn. It also can be considered for these other different types of really important areas, like with rehabilitation. And this is something that we should certainly be taking note of and monitoring to see where this type of a learning strategy can really go for helping people. So let's talk about final considerations and a few things to really make a note about for a moment here. There is a reason for why I am writing about immersive learning right now, and that is cost. There are several great reasons to adopt immersive learning, but I know that not every organization can afford these technologies. As an individual perspective, I have not purchased an Oculus or really anything of the sort because they've always been so darn expensive. So I've never thought about being able to buy them, let alone trying to be able to think about how can I develop trainings with them. When the Oculus and the other different types of similar headsets came out, they were all around like $500 or even more. Thankfully, these have consistently gone down year over year. Yes, they're still expensive, but the needle is moving in the right direction. I've seen some be around $250, $299. It's getting lower. It's getting more reasonable. Still expensive, but we're going in the right direction here. It's one reason for why I think I am finding more articles and more resources talking about organizations embracing this kind of technology, because now it's an easier sell to be able to say that we can do this, it's effective, and oh, hey, by the way, it's not going to cost an arm and a leg to be able to try and do this. And if you want to be able to bring this technology into your organization or your university, your company, let's say that VR is not an option. It's too expensive for you. You don't want to be able to go down this road. Well, then I would definitely look at AR. There are quite a few different forms of trainings out there pertaining to augmented reality that seem to be highly effective. Would love to see more research on them, but definitely I can go down that rabbit hole more to be able to find more research about AR, but it's more affordable and certainly it can still have the type of an impact that you are looking for. So overall, is immersive learning for everybody? No, it is not. It is not. I find it a bit ironic that I'm writing about the value of virtual headsets and how cool they are and how amazing they are, but I know full well that I can't use them for long periods of time. The first time that I wore one, I got motion sickness like within a second. I had to take that thing off. I had to basically lie down because I could simply not use it. The second time that I wore a type of a virtual headset, it triggered a migraine because I used it for too long a period of a time. It's like there is something that when our parents were warning us that we shouldn't be sitting too close to the TV screen, that actually does have real value to it. So some people are never going to be able to use these different forms of headsets. Pertaining to my migraines, accessibility features for these types of technologies, they're still evolving. They are not there yet from a number of different types of components and issues. It's great to see the progress that has been made, but of course, there is still room for improvement. So with all of that said, the right place, the right time, the right learners immersive learning can be incredible, and I'm extremely looking forward to seeing where in the future this is going to go and what we can do, and thinking about different types of other unexplored areas where this form of learning can really be impactful. And of course, if you are using immersive learning right now within your school or your organization, let me know. I would love to read more about it. I would love to hear about it. Send me anything you have, luke@drlukehobson.com. And of course, you can go down below and comment on the LinkedIn posts if you want to be able to share more about what you are currently working on. I really would love to be able to read more. And that, folks, is my deep dive into immersive learning. Hearing that podcast episode about with Jaden Daniels and using the VR headset for training, that really sent me down this rabbit hole that I really appreciate. I never thought listening to a fantasy football podcast would make me say learning. How does this tie into the real world? So it was a fun exploration to go through these different forms of resources and to learn a bit more. Once again, I'm going to put links below. Obviously, you can go into the actual article's website too if you want to be able just to read and see things there too. Whatever works for you, all that information will be provided below inside of the show notes. Of course, if you want to be fabulous and help me out, please feel free to give this show a 5-star rating wherever you are listening. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or some other platform that I probably don't know about. I will take any and all forms of positive reviews. And that, my friends, is all that I have for you today. Stay nerdy out there, and I'll talk to you next time.